No maid lasted 1 week with the cold billionaire until the obese one refused to leave. He's a cold billionaire with a house where staff disappear after 1 week. She's a bigger, blunt maid who needs the pay and refuses to be erased. She won't quit. He keeps her for security. A tabloid photo blows up. The staff becomes the story. Secrets in his locked study link his family to ruined small businesses. She finds proof. Forced close, sparks fly, power shifts. Now the board, the press, and his own family all press in. Will her courage bring him down? Or will his need for control destroy everything they both care about? Drop a comment below and share which part of the world you're tuning in from today. If you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Dawn painted Damien Voss's glass mansion in cold light. Everything gleamed with surgical precision, from the polished steel kitchen to the geometric furniture arranged like chess pieces on marble floors. In his study, Damien's jaw tightened as he stared at the faces on his video screen. The probe ends now. Clear the investigators or I'll handle it personally. His voice carried the kind of quiet that made people listen. But sir, the shareholders, that's all. Damien ended the call with a sharp tap. He straightened his silver cufflinks, a habit born from years of maintaining perfect control. The early morning light cast shadows across his face, highlighting the fatigue etched around his eyes. Across town, rain hammered against cracked windows as Kira Lane shoved the last of her clothes into a worn tote bag. Her tiny apartment felt even smaller with cardboard boxes stacked against the walls. She yanked the pink hospital bill from her fridge, the numbers swimming before her eyes. "Just breathe," she muttered, touching the eviction notice taped to her door. The paper was still damp from the rain. Final notice screamed in red letters, matching the color creeping into her cheeks. Kira checked her phone, already late. Perfect, just perfect. She squared her shoulders, adjusting her practical black sweater. The mirror showed a woman with determination in her eyes, even if her hands shook slightly. The bus ride to the Voss estate felt endless. Rain streaked the windows as Kira reviewed the job listing saved on her phone. 1 week position, live-in housekeeper, immediate start. Her practical mind calculated 7 days of work meant 7 days of shelter, maybe enough to figure out her next move. The mansion loomed ahead, all glass and angles against the grey sky. Kira hurried up the curved driveway, her sensible boots splashing through puddles. The house manager, Mrs. Peterson, opened the service entrance with precise efficiency. "References?" Mrs. Peterson's thin eyebrows arched as she scanned Kira's resume. 5 years at the Grand Plaza Hotel, housekeeping supervisor. 3 years managing the Riverside Inn before. New ownership took over. Kira kept her voice steady, professional. Experience with high-net-worth clients? I understand discretion and professional boundaries, if that's what you're asking. The click of expensive shoes on marble announced Damien's arrival. He filled the doorway in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, his presence immediate and commanding. His gaze swept over Kira in a practiced assessment, the kind that had dismissed countless others. Kira lifted her chin. "Mr. Voss, you're late." His voice was cool, detached. "The bus route was delayed due to weather. I can start immediately to make up the time." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise at her directness, perhaps. Mrs. Peterson. "References check out, available for the full week, but I have conditions." Kira interrupted, earning a sharp look from Mrs. Peterson. "I work hard, I'm thorough, but I won't tolerate comments about my size or appearance. I need access to private facilities, not shared staff bathrooms, and clear hours." Damien's jaw tightened. "You're negotiating before being hired." "I'm being honest about expectations. It saves time." He studied her for a long moment, thumb absently turning the silver signet ring on his finger. 7 days. Mrs. Peterson will show you the staff quarters. I don't have time for petty dramas or special arrangements." "Understood." Kira kept her voice neutral, even as relief flooded through her. 6 a.m. start tomorrow. Don't be late." He turned and strode away, leaving only the echo of his footsteps. Mrs. Peterson handed Kira a ring of keys, her expression carefully blank. "Staff entrance is through here. Your room is on the lower level." Kira inserted the key into the heavy door, metal cold against her palm. It swung open to reveal gleaming marble floors stretching into shadow. The air smelled of lemon polish and money. She stepped inside, letting out a slow breath as the door clicked shut behind her. The sound echoed in the empty hallway. 7 days in this sterile paradise. 7 days to figure out her next move. Her boots squeaked against the perfect floor, a small imperfection in all this precision. Somewhere above, a clock struck the hour, its chimes reverberating through the marble like a reminder that time was already counting down. Mrs. Peterson's voice cut through the silence. "This way to your quarters. I'll show you the daily schedule and expectations." She moved efficiently down the hallway, heels clicking a steady rhythm. Kira shouldered her worn tote bag, following the sharp clicks deeper into the house. The marble reflected their movements like a mirror, every step multiplied in its polished surface. Modern art pieces worth more than her yearly salary hung at perfect intervals, their stark lines emphasizing the clinical emptiness of the space. Water dripped from her coat onto the immaculate floor. She quickly wiped it with her sleeve, aware of Mrs. Peterson's disapproving glance. 7 days, in this pristine cage, where even raindrops seemed like an offense against order. The staff quarters door opened onto a small but well-appointed room. "Uniform is in the closet," Mrs. Peterson said. "Morning briefing at 5:45 a.m. sharp." Alone at last, Kira set her bag down carefully, as if the floor might break under even that small weight. The bed was narrow, but made with expensive sheets. A window looked out onto manicured gardens, rain still falling in sheets against the glass. She touched the hospital bill in her pocket, its edges worn from constant handling. 7 days. She could do anything for 7 days. Even navigate this world of cold marble and colder looks, where everything had its place except, perhaps, her. Elena's cane tapped against the marble floors as she led Kira through the mansion's morning routines. Despite being on medical leave, the head housekeeper had arrived at dawn, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. "Breakfast is served at exactly 6:30 a.m., Elena explained, gesturing to the kitchen staff who moved with practiced precision. "Mr. Voss takes his coffee black, 1 cup, in his study. No conversation unless he initiates it." Kira nodded, mentally mapping the house's rhythm. Security guards performed their morning checks, their earpieces gleaming as they spoke in hushed tones. "The East Wing is strictly private," Elena continued, her cane pointing toward a heavy wooden door. "Linens changed twice weekly, surfaces dusted daily. That study," she indicated a room with an elegant safe sign mounted beside it, "is off-limits unless specifically requested." They passed the library, its double doors slightly ajar. Kira glimpsed floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and paused at the wall of portraits. Generations of stern-faced men in expensive suits. Her eyes caught on an empty space, a lighter rectangle on the wallpaper where a frame had clearly hung for years. "Miss Lane." Damien's voice cut through her observations. He stood in the doorway, his presence filling the space. "This house operates on discretion and efficiency. I expect both." "Of course, Mr. Voss." Kira met his gaze steadily. "Elena will show you the laundry protocols. You'll handle linens and the private wing this week." His tone left no room for discussion. Elena led her to the laundry room, explaining the specific requirements for each fabric. Egyptian cotton sheets, silk pillowcases, all requiring precise care. The washing machines looked more sophisticated than any Kira had seen in hotels. Mid-morning brought Damien back unexpectedly, his footsteps sharp against the floor as he strode toward his study. He paused, noting a barely visible watermark on a side table where Kira had just placed fresh flowers. "Incompetence leaves traces," he said loudly enough for nearby staff to hear. "I expect better." Kira turned, arranging her features into professional calm. "You're right, Mr. Voss. Water rings do leave traces. Just like public criticism leaves traces on staff morale, both are easily avoided with proper handling." The silence that followed was absolute. Staff members froze, waiting for the explosion that usually followed any challenge to Damien Voss. But he merely stared at her, something shifting behind his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, at finding steel instead of submission. "Indeed," he said finally, his tone different. He disappeared into his study without another word. The day progressed in a blur of tasks. As evening approached, Kira entered the study to collect discarded coffee cups. Legal briefcases were stacked neatly against the wall, but something caught her eye. A small wooden box, its lid slightly askew, tucked behind them. A gust from the open window rattled the lid. A photograph slipped out, landing face up on the carpet. Kira moved to replace it, then stopped. The image showed an elderly man in a garden, a dark-haired child beside him. The boy's face. Something about it tugged at her memory, though she couldn't place why. She should return it. That would be the professional thing to do. Instead, her fingers closed around the photograph, slipping it into her pocket. The box was locked when she tried to open it properly, its wood smooth with age. Voices in the hallway made her step back quickly. She grabbed the coffee cups and exited, heart pounding. The photograph seemed to burn in her pocket, a small rebellion against all this ordered perfection. Through the window, she could see Damien's car pulling up the driveway, his driver opening the door with practiced timing. He emerged looking tired, the set of his shoulders heavy with whatever weight he carried from his business day. In the laundry room, Kira folded sheets with precise corners, each crease exact. The photograph remained in her pocket, a secret weight against her hip. Outside, rain began again, drops pattering against windows that stretched from floor to ceiling, nature's quiet rebellion against the mansion's imposed order. Mrs. Peterson appeared with the evening schedule. "Mr. Voss will take dinner in his study. No interruptions unless emergency protocols are activated." Kira nodded, continuing her folding. The sheets smelled of lavender, and something expensive she couldn't name. Everything here had a price tag she didn't want to contemplate. In the distance, a security guard made his rounds, footsteps echoing. The house settled into its evening routine, staff moving with quiet efficiency through their tasks. Somewhere above, a door closed with a soft click. She thought of the empty space on the library wall, the missing portrait like a gap in the house's carefully constructed narrative. The photograph in her pocket felt like a piece of that puzzle, though she couldn't yet see where it fit. The laundry room hummed with expensive machines, steam rising from pressed linens. Kira checked her watch. Hours yet until she could retreat to her room and examine her stolen piece of history. For now she had sheets to fold, surfaces to polish, a perfect facade to maintain. Through the window she could see lights clicking on in Damien's study, his silhouette moving past the glass. The rain continued its steady pattern, drawing silvery lines down windows that reflected the approaching evening. Another coffee cup appeared on her cart. The staff moved like ghosts, anticipating needs before they arose. Elena's voice echoed in her memory. "This house runs on precision and silence." But Kira was beginning to suspect it ran on secrets too, each one carefully locked away behind wooden boxes and missing portraits. Morning light streamed through the kitchen windows as Kira arranged breakfast items on a silver tray. The photograph weighed heavy in her apron pocket, a reminder of yesterday's impulse she needed to correct. 7:45 came and went. No Damien. At 8, his driver called to say Mr. Voss was running late. Kira remade the coffee, knowing cold breakfast would only worsen whatever mood accompanied tardiness. When Damien finally swept in at 8:30, his tie was slightly askew, a detail so out of character it caught her attention. He dropped into his chair without acknowledgement, reaching first for the Financial Times, while Kira poured steaming black coffee into a bone china cup. "The Wall Street Journal," he said without looking up. "Sir." "I read the Journal first, then the Financial Times." His voice carried the edge of someone whose routine had been disrupted. Kira switched the papers silently, watching as he scanned headlines with methodical precision. His breakfast sat untouched except for the coffee, which he drained in long sips. Now was her chance. She reached into her pocket, fingers curling around the photograph. "Mr. Voss, I found something yesterday that I believe belongs to you." His eyes flicked up, then widened fractionally as she extended the photograph. The muscle in his jaw tightened. "Where did you find this?" His voice was winter cold. "Behind some briefcases in your study. The box it was in." "You went through my personal items?" Each word dropped like ice. "No, sir. The wind from the window. Do not touch my things again." He snatched the photograph, his fingers white-knuckled around the edges. "Is that clear?" "Crystal, sir." Kira kept her voice level, though her cheeks burned. He stood abruptly, leaving his breakfast untouched. Through the kitchen door's window, she watched him pause in the hallway, glancing at the photograph before sliding it carefully into his breast pocket. The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks. While dusting the hallway outside Damien's office that afternoon, rapid French filtered through the door. Kira's high school French was rusty, but she caught fragments. "Impossible to contain the leak," and "emergency board meeting." Damien's voice rose sharply. "No, c'est inacceptable." A pause. "The investors cannot know yet. I need time." The sound of something heavy hitting. The desk made her jump. She hurried away before the door could open, but his agitation lingered in her mind. What kind of pressure made someone like Damien Voss lose control? That evening, while folding fresh linens in the servants' quarters, Rosa joined her. The older woman's hands moved with practiced efficiency through the stack of sheets. "You handled him well this morning," Rosa said, smoothing a pillowcase. "Most don't last when he gets like that." "Like what?" "Cold. Critical." Rosa's lips twisted. "Last girl left crying after 3 days. The one before her lasted 5. Quit after someone spread rumors about her and the chauffeur." "Someone?" Rosa shrugged. "Things happen here. Small things. A missing uniform, whispered comments. Schedule changes without notice. No one lasts a week." Kira thought of the photograph, the tension in Damien's face. "Sounds like a challenge." "You're different from the others." Rosa studied her. "Stronger, maybe. But be careful. This house has ways of breaking people." "I don't break easily." Kira squared her shoulders, attacking the sheet corners with renewed determination. "We'll see." Rosa patted her arm before leaving. "We always see." Alone in the laundry room, Kira continued folding. The linens were Egyptian cotton, smooth as water under her fingers. Each fold had to be perfect. She wouldn't give anyone reason to complain. Unknown to her, Damien stood at his study window, watching her methodical movements. His expression was unreadable, the photograph from this morning still in his breast pocket, its edges worn by a day of unconscious touching. The last rays of sunset painted the laundry room golden. Kira's hands never faltered in their task, each sheet transformed into precise hospital corners. Her chin was lifted slightly, defiant, even alone. Upstairs, Damien's phone buzzed again. The board member's name flashed on the screen, but he let it go to voicemail. Instead, he stood at the window, observing the woman who had challenged him at breakfast, who now folded his linens with the same care she'd shown defending her dignity. In the growing dusk, security lights clicked on automatically, creating pools of brightness in the manicured gardens. Staff moved through their evening routines, dinner preparations, turn-down service, security checks. But Damien remained at the window, watching Kira work in solitary focus, while the photograph of a long-ago summer burned in his pocket like a brand. The evening settled over the estate like a heavy blanket. In the laundry room, Kira finished the last sheet, each stack precise as a military formation. She checked her watch. 6 more days to prove Rosa wrong. 6 days to show she wouldn't be driven out by whispers or small cruelties. Through the window, she could see lights blazing in Damien's study. His silhouette passed back and forth, a restless shadow against the glass. Whatever pressures he faced, whatever secrets that photograph held, she resolved they wouldn't affect her determination to survive this week with her dignity intact. The security lights cast her shadow long across the laundry room floor as she gathered her supplies. Above, Damien finally moved away from his window, the photograph a constant presence against his heart, while the evening wrapped the mansion in shadows that held more questions than answers. The morning headlines exploded across Kira's phone screen as she waited for the coffee maker to finish brewing. Voss's mystery woman. Late-night rendezvous raises questions. Below the screaming text was a grainy photo of Damien leaving Archer's, one of the city's most exclusive restaurants, his hand hovering protectively near a woman's back. Her stomach dropped when she scrolled further. Sources suggest intimate relationship with household staff member. The implications were clear in the unflattering angle of the photo, deliberately chosen to make the woman appear larger than she was. The kitchen door swung open violently. James, one of the younger household staff, stumbled in with red-rimmed eyes. "They're firing people," he choked out. "Someone leaked that photo." Security personnel in dark suits appeared behind him. "Mr. Peterson, please collect your belongings." Kira watched helplessly as they escorted James out. The coffee maker beeped in the silence he left behind. Upstairs, phones rang incessantly. She could hear Damien's clipped tone through the study door as she passed with the breakfast tray. "I don't care what it costs. Find the source." The PR team arrived within the hour, filing into the main conference room with grim expressions. Damien emerged from his study looking dangerous. His usual precise control had hardened into something brittle. "All staff records will be reviewed," he announced to the gathered household employees. "New privacy protocols are effective immediately. Anyone found in violation will be terminated without reference." His eyes swept the room, landing briefly on Kira. Something in his expression made her skin prickle. "Miss Lane, my office." Whispers followed her as she walked the gauntlet of stairs. Inside his study, Damien closed the door with deliberate care. "The board is demanding action," he said without preamble. "You will be placed under security protocols, officially for your protection." "My protection? The press has already made assumptions about staff relationships. This gives you a shield of legitimacy while we contain the situation." Kira's phone buzzed. A friend had sent a link to a gossip site. "Voss's kept woman? Sources say household staff member caught his eye." Her cheeks burned. "I won't be your convenient cover story." "This isn't a request." His voice was arctic. "The protocols start now." She straightened her spine. "Then you should know I won't play along silently." Back in her quarters that evening, Kira's hands shook as she wrote. "Mr. Voss, I understand the need for damage control, but I won't be used as a scapegoat or shield. I deserve better than tabloid speculation about my integrity or body." I am here to work, nothing more. If you want my cooperation with these protocols, I need honesty about what's really happening. Kay Lane. She slipped it under his office door before she could lose her nerve. His response came an hour later, a terse note handed to her by his assistant. Stay out of it. This is bigger than your pride. Kira sat at her small desk, staring at her laptop. The tabloid stories had multiplied, each more sensational than the last. Comment sections overflowed with cruel speculation about her appearance, her motives, her character. With trembling fingers, she created an anonymous account and typed, I am the woman in today's headlines. I work for a living. I have dignity and integrity. Your assumptions about my body, my worth, or my relationship with my employer say more about you than me. I won't be shamed for doing my job. She hit post before she could second-guess herself. Within minutes, a local lifestyle blogger shared it with a simple comment. Finally, someone speaks truth to power. The real story isn't about secret relationships, it's about how we treat working women. Stand with her. Kira watched the small but steady stream of supportive responses trickle in. Each one felt like a tiny victory against the mansion's suffocating silence. In his study, Damien read her message for the 10th time, the restaurant photo spread across his desk. The woman beside him was partially obscured, but her silhouette was unmistakable. The real story behind that dinner would destroy more than reputations if it got out. He picked up his phone to check the latest coverage and paused, seeing Kira's anonymous post. His jaw tightened as he read her quiet defiance. She had no idea what she'd stepped into, or how dangerous speaking out could be. The board meeting notifications continued to flash across his screen. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more demands for containment. But tonight, in a small corner of the internet, Kira's truth stood unashamed against the tide of speculation. She sat in her quarters, watching the supporter count slowly rise. Outside her window, security teams patrolled the grounds with new vigilance. Whatever storm was coming, she had drawn her line in the sand. She wouldn't be silenced, wouldn't be shaped into someone else's convenient narrative. The night settled over the mansion, heavy with unspoken tensions. In his study, Damien stared at the photograph that had started it all, while Kira's words echoed in his mind. I deserve better than this. The question was whether he could afford to give her the truth she demanded, or whether keeping her in the dark was the only way to keep her safe. Maya's heels clicked against marble as she shadowed Kira through her morning routine. Mr. Voss requires all staff movements documented, she explained, tapping rapidly on her tablet. I'm cleaning bathrooms, not launching missiles. Kira muttered, adjusting her cleaning cart. Maya's lips twitched. Protocol is protocol. The mansion felt different under surveillance. Every corridor now had a security guard posted, their earpieces gleaming. Kira focused on her work, hyper-aware of eyes tracking her movements. During a quiet moment between tasks, she noticed Maya's exhaustion, dark circles poorly concealed under makeup. Rough week. The board meeting. Maya glanced at her tablet. Mr. Voss is facing intense scrutiny. On the kitchen radio, a business news segment played. Voss Holdings CEO addresses internal matters in unprecedented shareholder statement. Damien's voice cut through, controlled but strained. I take full responsibility for any appearance of impropriety. Maya switched it off quickly. We don't need to hear that. During lunch break, Kira used the quiet to explore the West Wing. The study door was unlocked, unusual for this time of day. Inside, subtle signs of Damien's private life emerged. A collection of vinyl records in a locked cabinet, their spines weathered with age. A coffee mug on his desk bore a patched leather sleeve, the stitching amateur but careful. These weren't the possessions of the cold CEO from the news. These belonged to someone who appreciated worn things, who kept what mattered. The wooden box caught her eye again, partially visible behind a stack of papers. This time, when she lifted it, a yellowed paper slipped free from its warped lid. The letter was water-damaged, but fragments were legible. Ensure the Davidson sale remains confidential. Board must never know the true circumstances. Protect the family at all costs. Kira's conscience warred with curiosity. This wasn't her business. She was here to clean, not to uncover corporate secrets. Still, why would Damien keep such an inflammatory document? She carefully returned the letter, but the questions lingered. Late afternoon brought chaos. Water seeped under the guest bathroom door, spreading across expensive hardwood. A pipe had burst behind the wall, threatening to flood the entire wing. "Call maintenance," Maya ordered, already dialing. "No time," Kira said, assessing the damage. "Where's the main water shut-off?" She'd handled similar emergencies in her hotel days. Working quickly, she located the valve, stopped the flood, and organized the staff into an efficient cleanup crew. By the time Damien returned home, the crisis was contained. He found her directing the last of the cleanup, sleeves rolled up, completely in command. "The pipe's temporary fix will hold until morning," she reported matter-of-factly. "I've contacted your regular plumber for proper repairs." Damien studied her, something shifting in his expression. "You handled this well. It's my job." She met his gaze steadily, though usually without an audience. Maya hovered nearby, tablet ready, but Damien waved her off, his attention still on Kira. "Most people panic in crisis," he said quietly. "Panicking wastes time." Kira shrugged. "The floor won't dry itself." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. He turned to leave, then paused. "The vintage jazz collection in my study. You noticed it earlier?" Kira tensed. "I wasn't snooping." "John Coltrane. The Blue Album." His voice softened slightly. "My father's favorite." Before she could respond, he was gone, leaving Kira to wonder at this small, unexpected glimpse behind his armor. The rest of the evening passed in relative calm. Security maintained their posts, Maya continued her hovering, but something had shifted. The staff whispered about Kira's quick thinking during the flood, how she'd prevented a major scandal for the household. In her quarters that night, Kira reviewed her day, the letter's cryptic warning, Damien's subtle approval, Maya's exhausted vigilance. 3 days into her employment, and already she was entangled in whatever storm surrounded the Voss family. She thought of the worn coffee mug, the carefully maintained records, the letter hidden away. Small details that suggested Damien Voss was more than headlines and board meetings. He was someone who preserved things, who protected secrets, who remembered his father's favorite jazz. The question was, what else was he protecting? And why did she increasingly feel it mattered to find out? Tomorrow would bring more security protocols, more careful watching, more corporate drama played out in whispers and news segments. But tonight, Kira allowed herself to consider that perhaps there was more to this household and its master than met the eye. Maya's final check-in came via text. "All secure for the night. 6 a.m. start tomorrow." Kira set her alarm, listening to the quiet hum of the mansion settling. Somewhere above, in his private quarters, Damien was likely reviewing damage reports or preparing for another board meeting. She wondered if he ever played those old jazz records when no one was around to hear. The morning sun hadn't yet touched the study windows when Damien's legal team arrived. Their leather briefcases and grim expressions spoke volumes. "The hostile takeover attempt is gaining traction," Marcus Chen, head counsel, reported. "Someone's feeding internal data to Winchester Holdings." Damien's jaw tightened. "Show me." Spreadsheets and emails spread across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. numbers that shouldn't exist outside their firewalls, meeting minutes that were supposed to be confidential. His phone buzzed. Theo. Not now. Damien snapped into the receiver. The board's asking questions about Davidson Corp. Theo's voice held an edge. We need to talk. There's nothing to discuss. Damien's tone could have frozen water. Handle your division and stay out of this. He ended the call, turning back to Marcus. Lock down everything. No one accesses sensitive data without triple verification. Kira checked her watch as she left the mansion. Her afternoon off felt like coming up for air after days underwater. The local market buzzed with real life, vendors calling prices, children begging for treats, the smell of fresh bread and coffee. She studied soap displays at Mrs. Chen's stall, testing scents. The kitchen staff deserved better than the harsh industrial cleanser that left their hands raw. Kira, is that you? She turned to find Mike, a former colleague from the Grand Plaza Hotel. His friendly smile faded to concern. I saw those tabloid photos, he said quietly. You okay? It's nothing. Kira shrugged. Just doing my job. Be careful. Remember Sandra from accounting. The papers destroyed her when that CEO scandal broke. They don't care who gets hurt. Kira chose a gentle lavender soap, wrapping it carefully. I can handle myself. You always could. Mike smiled. Just watch your back in that world. The mansion's evening silence felt heavier after the market's warmth. Kira delivered the soap to the grateful kitchen staff, then headed toward her quarters. Voices from the study made her pause. The board requires those documents, Damien. A woman's sharp tone carried through the door. Winchester's legal team claims you used shell companies to hide the Davidson acquisition. That was years ago. Damien's voice was cold. The matter is closed. Not if there was fraud involved. We need transparency. You have my answer. Kira backed away quietly, her mind racing. Corporate wars, hidden documents, shell companies. She'd walked into more than a staff position. Her phone buzzed. An email from her landlord. Rent increased by 40%. Her savings wouldn't cover even 2 months. She sat in the staff kitchen, yesterday's paper spread before her, but unseeing. Leaving meant homelessness. Staying meant being caught in whatever storm was building. The kitchen's fluorescent lights hummed. Beyond the window, Damien's study glowed like a lighthouse in darkness. Their worlds, separated by glass and wealth and secrets, touched briefly in the night. Kira smoothed the newspaper. Decision made. She would stay, for survival, yes, but also because truth lived in this house's shadows. The question was, whose truth would emerge first? In his study, Damien stood at the window. Below, Kira sat alone in the staff kitchen. Newspaper spread before her like a map to somewhere else. He watched her steady presence, wondering what she saw when she looked back at his world of glass and steel. The board's accusations echoed. Shell companies, hidden funds, his father's legacy threatening to unravel thread by thread. His phone buzzed again. Theo. He let it ring. Maya appeared in the doorway. Sir, the Tokyo investors are waiting. Damien turned from the window. In the kitchen below, Kira gathered her newspaper, movements precise and practical. Their worlds separated again as she disappeared into the staff wing. Put them through, he said, settling behind his desk. Another battle in this war of attrition. The phone lit up with incoming calls. Somewhere in the mansion, a clock struck midnight. Tomorrow would bring more accusations, more demands for truth. But tonight, the house held its secrets close. And in the staff wing, Kira Lane chose to stay, a decision that would change everything, though neither of them knew it yet. Through the study window, city lights glittered like fallen stars. Damien opened the Davidson file, its edges worn from handling. The truth had so many faces, some hidden in shell companies, some serving coffee in staff kitchens. Time would reveal which version survived. Maya's tablet chimed with security updates. The night shift began their rounds. In her quarters, Kira wrote in her small notebook, Day 4, Corporate War Zone. Truth somewhere in the walls. The mansion settled into its nighttime rhythm of silence and secrets. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new choices, new intersections of their separate worlds. For now, they each guarded their positions. Damien in his glass tower, Kira in her staff quarters, the truth waiting somewhere between. The mansion's night silence pressed against the windows. At 3 a.m., Kira made her final rounds, checking locks and thermostats. The security system hummed, red dots blinking in darkness. A thud from the east wing stopped her. Then ragged breathing. She found Damien slumped against the hallway wall, one hand clutching his chest. His usual composure had shattered. Face grey, tie askew, breath coming in harsh gasps. A news tablet lay fallen beside him, screen still glowing. Board demands emergency meeting. Voss Holdings under investigation. Mr. Voss? Kira kept her voice steady, professional. When he didn't respond, she knelt beside him. You're having a panic attack. I need you to focus on my voice. His eyes, usually sharp with authority, were wild with fear. Can't breathe. Yes, you can. She spoke firmly, like addressing a spooked horse. Put your hand here. She guided his palm to rest flat against the wall. Feel how solid that is? Focus on that. His fingers spread against the cool surface. Kira noticed his signet ring had slipped sideways. Now breathe with me. In through your nose. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold it. Out through your mouth. She demonstrated, exaggerating the rhythm. Again. Gradually, his breathing steadied. Color returned to his face. The terror in his eyes dulled to exhaustion. The wall, she continued quietly. What's it made of? Marble. He managed. Italian. Good. What else can you feel? Cold. Smooth. His voice strengthened slightly. There's a flaw in the grain near my hand. Perfect. Keep focusing on those details. They sat in silence, broken only by his steadying breaths. Kira remained beside him, present but not hovering, until his shoulders relaxed. Would you like water? She asked. He nodded. She retrieved a glass from a nearby service station, noting how his hands had stopped shaking when he accepted it. Thank you. The words came rough, unpracticed. Of course. She gathered the fallen tablet, tactfully angling it face down. Can you stand? He pushed himself up, swaying slightly. Kira didn't offer help. Something told her he needed to manage this himself. But she stayed close as he found his balance. Ms. Lane. He cleared his throat. This incident was a private medical moment that doesn't require discussion. She straightened her uniform. Will you be able to reach your room safely? Relief flickered across his face. Gratitude for her discretion. Yes. Then good night, Mr. Voss. She resumed her rounds, allowing him dignity in retreat. Behind her, his footsteps moved slowly toward the master suite. Dawn arrived with its usual precision. Kira entered the kitchen to find an envelope on the staff bulletin board, her name written in precise strokes. Inside lay a brief note. Ms. Lane, your assistance last night was appreciated. Please accept this bonus for your discretion and professionalism. A check for $5,000 was paperclipped to the corner. Kira waited until the morning staff meeting. Mr. Voss, she said clearly, sliding the envelope across the table. While I appreciate the gesture, I don't accept payment for basic human decency. The room went silent. Damien looked up from his morning reports, face unreadable. "The bonus is earned," he said flatly. "Then apply it to my regular wages. But I won't take extra money for keeping quiet about someone being human." Their eyes met across the polished table. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, or recognition. "As you wish." He returned to his papers. But Kira noticed his tone had lost its usual frost. The day unfolded normally. Linens changed, surfaces dusted, meals served. Yet subtle differences emerged. Damien's customary cutting remarks about staff efficiency never came. When their paths crossed in the hallway, he nodded, a tiny acknowledgement. In her quarters that evening, Kira removed the note from her pocket. She'd returned the check but kept his words, tucked them between pages of her battered recipe notebook. The mansion settled into its nighttime quiet. Through her window, she could see Damien's study light still burning. But now she knew what lay behind that glossy facade. A man who sometimes broke, who breathed against marble walls until the world steadied. The security system hummed. Somewhere, a clock chimed midnight. Kira began her nightly rounds, checking locks and thermostats. But tonight, the silence felt different. Less like a barrier, more like a shared secret. In the East Wing hallway, she paused. Her hand found the marble wall, traced the floor in the grain he'd noticed. A small, permanent imperfection in all this calculated perfection. The house around her held its usual ordered peace. But something had shifted, like a door unlocked by trembling hands at 3 a.m. Not friendship exactly, not yet trust, but a crack in the careful distance between their worlds. She continued her rounds. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, more corporate battles, more careful boundaries to maintain. But tonight they'd found common ground in human frailty. The security panel blinked its steady red lights. Kira checked the final lock, marked her log sheet. Above, Damien's study light clicked off, plunging the mansion into darkness. In her pocket, his note rustled. 7 words of gratitude, more valuable than any check. She'd earned that much, at least. The right to be seen as more than staff, less than a secret keeper. Just a person who knew how to breathe against panic, how to guide someone back to solid ground. The night settled around her, quiet and watching. Tomorrow would reset their careful dance of employer and employee. But something had changed in those pre-dawn moments, something neither money nor pride could erase. Kira learned more from a teacup than any corporate filing. She watched Rosa's weathered hands arrange the staff room's morning china, noting how the older woman's movements slowed when discussing the Voss family. 20 years in this house, Rosa murmured, straightening sugar packets. The father, he was different, harder maybe, but honest in his way. Then one morning, poof! She snapped arthritic fingers. Gone. Gone? Kira kept her voice neutral, wiping down the counter. Young Damien was maybe 16. The papers said business trip, but... Rosa shrugged. The mother changed after. Everything became about image, keeping up appearances. The morning sun slanted through industrial-grade windows, catching dust motes in its beam. Kira absorbed this, filing it away with other collected fragments. Later, while changing linens in the East Wing, she overheard 2 maintenance workers discussing the latest tabloid splash. An anonymous source had leaked emails suggesting Voss Holdings used shell companies to hide questionable transactions. Stocks dropping, one whispered. Boards in chaos. Kira smoothed pristine cotton corners, her mind working. The timing felt deliberate. Someone was orchestrating these hits. Maya found her that afternoon in the service corridor, the assistant's usually perfect composure cracking at the edges. Can we talk? Maya glanced over her shoulder. Privately. They slipped into the empty laundry room. Maya's fingers twisted her pearl necklace. They're watching everything, Maya said. Every email, every phone call, someone's feeding information to the press, but it's twisted, changed to look worse. Why tell me this? Kira folded towels, maintaining normalcy. Because Maya swallowed. I'm being pressured to find the source. But I think someone's using my access. If I don't play along, they'll... She stopped, touching a photo in her wallet. A young girl's face. My niece's medical care depends on family connections. Kira studied Maya's face. Genuine fear beneath the polish. What exactly are you asking? Help me watch. The staff trust you. You notice things. If we can identify who's planting these stories, and in return. I'll share what I find in the administrative files, but you can't go public. Promise me. Kira considered the risks. I'll help look, but I won't lie if I find something illegal. Maya nodded, relief softening her features. That's fair. Here. She pressed a key into Kira's palm. Supply closet on the 3rd floor. Check the blue filing cabinet after midnight. The rest of the day passed in careful observation. Kira noted which staff members lingered near Damien's office, who took phone calls in corners. She catalogued small details. Security camera blind spots when delivery schedules changed. That night, she used her cleaning duties as cover to access the 3rd floor closet. The filing cabinet yielded a stack of invoices, ordinary purchases hiding irregular payments. But it was the locked drawer in Damien's study that held the real surprise. While dusting his desk, her new security clearance granting access, she noticed the drawer's lock was subtly different. Older, worn brass instead of modern steel. Her picks, skills learned from a misspent youth, made quick work of it. Inside lay a leather-bound ledger, its pages filled with coded entries. Most meant nothing to her until Carson & Sons, Lumber Mill, asset acquisition complete. The name hit like a physical blow. Carson's Mill had employed half her hometown before mysteriously closing 10 years ago. Hundreds lost jobs, including her father. The official story claimed market forces, but here was proof of something else. She photographed the page with trembling hands, replaced everything exactly, and retreated to her quarters. The connection was clear now. Voss Holdings had engineered the mill's collapse, though the why remained murky. 2 days into her temporary position, and she'd stumbled into a web of corporate intrigue that somehow connected to her own past. Maya's warning about planted stories nagged at her. Was someone trying to expose legitimate wrongs or manipulate half-truths for their own agenda? The mansion's night sounds surrounded her. Central air humming, security cameras whirring. Somewhere above, Damien was probably still working, unaware that his new maid now held pieces of his family's secrets. Her phone buzzed. Maya requesting a morning meeting. Found something interesting in the board minutes. The text read, "Watch your back." Kira stared at her ceiling, weighing loyalty against justice. The mill's closure had devastated her community, but Maya's situation suggested more victims in this story. Perhaps the truth lay somewhere between revenge and redemption. Tomorrow she'd start asking careful questions about Carson's mill. For now, she updated her notes, adding details about staff movements and suspicious patterns. Her hospitality training had taught her to observe without being noticed, skill now serving a different purpose. The ledger's image burned in her phone's memory. One small thread pulled loose from Damien's carefully constructed world. She thought of his panic attack, wondering if he carried his father's secrets as another weight. Rosa's words echoed. Everything became about image. But whose image? And what lay beneath the perfect surface of Voss Holdings' success? A door clicked somewhere in the house. Kira tucked her notes away and prepared for her evening rounds. She had 7 days to unravel this mystery, or at least enough of it to understand her own place in the story. Maya's key sat heavy in her pocket, a reminder of their uneasy alliance. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more choices between truth and protection. For tonight, she had her roles to play: efficient housekeeper, quiet observer, keeper of secrets both old and new. The mansion settled around her, its marble halls holding decades of carefully buried history. Somewhere in those polished corridors, truth and lies danced together, waiting to be untangled. The library summons came through Maya at dusk. "Mr. Voss requests your assistance with the linens in the West Wing library." Kira knew there weren't any linens stored in the library. Still, she gathered her cleaning caddy. Appearances mattered in this house, and made her way through the dimming corridors. She found Damien standing at the library's carved oak doors, his usual crisp suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled to expose strong forearms. He looked softer in the fading light, more human. "Follow me," he said quietly, producing an old brass key. The door opened not to the main library, but to a hidden panel that swung inward, revealing a smaller room. The space felt frozen in time. Dusty beams of sunset filtered through leaded glass windows, illuminating shelves crammed, not with books, but with memories. Polaroids spread across a desk, a child's navy sweater carefully folded, newspaper clippings yellowed with age. "I've never shown anyone this room," Damien said, his voice rough. "Not even the board knows it exists." Kira moved carefully through the space, noting how different it felt from the mansion's sterile perfection. Here, time had been allowed to settle like the dust motes dancing in the air. "Why show me?" He picked up a typed letter, paper creased from repeated folding. "Because you see through the facade, and maybe—" He swallowed hard. "Maybe it's time someone did." The letter began, "Dear E." The words that followed were raw with regret, speaking of choices made and prices paid. It was unsigned, unsent. "My father disappeared when I was 12, Damien said, settling heavily into a worn leather chair. "No warning, no goodbye, just gone." His fingers traced the letter's edge. "Mother said he'd abandoned us, betrayed the family. She protected us the only way she knew how, by becoming ruthless." Kira studied his face, seeing past the powerful CEO to the wounded boy beneath. Iris made deals to keep the Empire. She did what she thought necessary. His jaw tightened. "Hostile takeovers, leveraged buyouts. Anyone who threatened us got crushed." "Like Carson's mill?" Kira asked quietly. His head snapped up. "You know about that? I grew up in that town, watched families lose everything when it closed." Silence stretched between them. Finally, Damien spoke, voice barely audible. "I built walls, kept everyone at arm's length, easier to be feared than—" He trailed off. "Than to risk being abandoned again?" Kira finished. He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. "But why never make it right?" She pressed. "You have the power now. Those families, I tell myself it's complicated. Corporate structure, shareholder obligations." His laugh was bitter. "But you're right. They're excuses. Fear makes prisons," Kira said softly. "But it doesn't have to define you forever." Damien stood abruptly, pacing to the window. "I don't know how to be different. This fortress—" He gestured at the mansion around them. "It's all I know." "Start small," Kira suggested. "One truth at a time." He turned to face her, moonlight silvering his profile. "Like showing you this room?" "Like that," she agreed. He moved closer, stopping just within reach. "You make me want to try," he whispered. "To be more." The kiss, when it came, was gentle, nothing like the commanding CEO she'd expected. His lips brushed hers hesitantly, as if asking permission. Kira leaned in, answering his uncertainty with quiet acceptance. It lasted only moments, but something fundamental shifted between them. When they parted, both understood the delicate balance required. Public roles maintained, private truths shared. "Tomorrow," Damien said, straightening his shoulders. "I'll be Mr. Voss again." "And I'll be the temporary maid," Kira agreed. "But here, we're just ourselves." They left the memory room separately, maintaining appearances. But as Kira walked the moonlit halls to her quarters, she felt the weight of his trust, his confession, settling alongside her own secrets. The mansion's shadows seemed different now, less threatening, more like velvet curtains hiding tender truths. She thought of the unsent letter, of choices unmade and words unspoken, of fortresses built not from strength, but from fear. In her room, she touched her lips where his kiss lingered. Tomorrow would bring its own complications, but for now, this moment was enough. This crack in his armor, this glimpse of the man behind the mask. She understood now that Damien's power wasn't in his wealth or position, but in his capacity to change, to grow beyond the prison of his past. Whether he would choose that growth remained to be seen. The night settled around her, full of possibility and warning. They'd crossed a line, but the real challenge lay ahead. Navigating their roles while holding space for this fragile new truth between them. Through her window, she could see lights still burning in Damien's study. Both of them, awake in their separate spaces, carrying the memory of that kiss, that confession, that shared understanding of all that must remain unspoken beyond the memory room's walls. The crystal glasses clinked as servers moved efficiently through Damien's dining room. Tonight's charity dinner sparkled with forced glamour, board members and their spouses making small talk, while reporters lurked outside the gates. Kira watched from her assigned post near the kitchen, noting how Damien's shoulders tensed beneath his perfect suit. The morning's news still hung heavy. Voss Holdings had lost the Anderson contract. Their patents somehow leaked to competitors. "Such a shame about Anderson Tech," Theo said, raising his voice just enough to carry. He lounged in his chair, all charm and expensive cologne. "But then, family always comes first, doesn't it, brother?" Damien's knife paused over his plate. "Indeed. Speaking of family..." Theo leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper that only Damien could hear. "Sometimes survival requires difficult choices." From her position, Kira saw Damien's jaw clench. The whole dinner felt like theatre, every gesture calculated, every smile masking teeth. In the kitchen, Carly Hopkins, the new PR executive, kept checking her phone. Her fingers trembled slightly as she typed, glancing frequently toward the main dining room. "Everything okay?" Kira asked, passing with a tray. "Fine," Carly snapped, too quickly. "Just work stuff." Across town, Elliot Park sat at his desk at the Daily Chronicle, scanning the email that had just landed in his inbox. His eyes widened at the attached documents, offshore accounts, transfer dates, all linking back to Voss Holdings. The charity dinner wrapped up near midnight. As the last guests departed, Kira overheard snippets of board members' conversations: liability, step down, interim leadership. Morning arrived with headlines. Elliot Park's article painted a damning picture: mysterious transfers, shell companies, and questions about who had access to sensitive data. Kira's name appeared in paragraph 6, noted as a recent hire with unprecedented access to the CEO's private quarters. She was restocking linens when Maya rushed in. "There's a reporter at the gate. He's asking for you." Kira's stomach dropped, but she kept her movement steady, folding the sheet in her hands. "I haven't done anything wrong." "That doesn't matter," Maya said softly. "They're building a narrative." In his study, Damien stood at the window, watching as Elliot Park approached Kira outside. The reporter's notepad was already out, pen poised. "Miss Lane, can you explain your presence during the data transfers on March 15th? Kira's voice carried clearly. "I don't discuss my employment or Mr. Voss's business matters. Sources suggest you had access to sensitive information. I'm a housekeeper." Kira cut in, dignity intact. "I do my job, professionally and ethically. That's all I'll say." Damien's hands clenched behind his back. He wanted to intervene, to protect her from this circus, but moving now would only feed the speculation. In a nearby coffee shop, Theo sat with James, a junior IT staffer, sliding an envelope across the table. "Just make sure the timestamps match," he murmured. "Put her in the study during those transfers." "But she wasn't. For your sister's medical bills." Theo reminded him smoothly. "Sometimes family needs us to make hard choices." Back at the mansion, the board gathered for an emergency meeting. Damien sat at the head of the table, his expression carved from stone as members called for his temporary removal. "The Anderson contract was just the beginning," Margaret Chen, head of the board, stated. "We need to contain this." "I won't step down," Damien said quietly. "It's not a request, Damien. It's damage control." Kira worked through the morning, aware of whispers following her. The staff's eyes held either pity or suspicion. She kept her head high, her movements precise, even as her phone buzzed with messages from unknown numbers. In the kitchen, Maya discovered Carly deleting emails. Their eyes met, Carly's guilty, Maya's knowing, before Carly hurried away. Damien watched it all from his study, feeling the walls closing in. He'd built this empire on control, on perfect order, and now it was slipping through his fingers. Worse, he was watching Kira pay the price for proximity to his world. Through the window, he could see her walking to the garden, her spine straight despite the photographer lurking at the gate. His chest tightened with an unfamiliar ache, the need to protect warring with the knowledge that any action would only make things worse. His phone buzzed, another board member demanding answers. On his desk, the morning papers screamed about corporate corruption, and somewhere in the city, Elliot Park was piecing together a story that threatened to unravel everything. The day stretched on, each hour bringing new pressures. Damien moved through it like a man underwater, maintaining his mask of control while watching his carefully constructed world begin to crack. In the staff quarters, Kira found a note slipped under her door. "Looking for a source willing to talk. Good compensation. EP." She ripped it into tiny pieces, let them flutter into the trash. Outside her window, another photographer waited. Inside the mansion, more whispers circulated. But she continued her work, refusing to be pushed out by innuendo and threats. The sun set on a household under siege. In his study, Damien stared at the Anderson contract's termination notice. In the kitchen, Maya watched Carly make another furtive phone call, and in his downtown office, Elliot Park began connecting dots that would soon explode across headlines. Kira's fingers trembled as she held the yellowed banknote. She'd found it while dusting the library's economics section, tucked between pages like a forgotten bookmark. The business name jumped out immediately. Lane and Sons Fresh Market. Her grandmother's store. The same corner market stall that had fed 3 generations of her family until it mysteriously went under 15 years ago. The note detailed a series of small business acquisitions under Voss Holdings' subsidiary companies. Her grandmother's market was listed among dozens of others, all purchased through a complex web of shell companies that traced back to Iris Voss. Kira sank into one of the library's leather chairs, her chest tight. She remembered the day her grandmother locked up for the last time, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Sometimes the big fish eat the little ones," she'd said, But it hadn't been that simple. The note revealed a calculated strategy. Buy out small vendors, consolidate properties, flip them to developers. Her grandmother's life work had been nothing but a chess piece in Iris Voss's game. She found Damien in his study that afternoon, reviewing contracts. He looked up when she entered, his expression softening slightly. Their new, fragile understanding evident in his eyes. "Mr. Voss," she said formally, holding out the note. "I need to ask you about this." He took it, scanning the contents. His jaw tightened. "Where did you find this?" "Does it matter? That market, Lane and Sons, was my grandmother's life work." Her voice shook. "Your mother's company destroyed it, destroyed dozens of families' livelihoods." Damien stood, his movements sharp. Those acquisitions were legal business transactions. "Legal doesn't mean right." Kira stepped closer. "Did you know about how these takeovers were engineered?" "I wasn't involved in day-to-day operations then." His tone grew defensive. "Corporate restructuring is complex. Don't hide behind corporate speak." Kira cut in. "These were real people. My grandmother lost everything." Damien's face hardened. "I don't know the details of every historical acquisition. If you have concerns about past business dealings, take them up with our legal department." "So you just profit from it and look the other way?" His eyes flashed. "I have a board meeting." He gathered his papers roughly. "This conversation is over." The door clicked shut behind him, leaving Kira alone with her anger and grief. That evening, she sat in the staff quarters with her laptop. Her fingers moved across the keyboard, pouring out the story. Her grandmother's market stall with its fresh flowers and homemade bread, the community it served, the day the notice came. She wrote about the human cost of corporate takeovers, families displaced, communities fractured, traditions lost. She didn't name Voss Holdings or Damien, but she painted a vivid picture of what happens when profit trumps people. "We talk about business like it's just numbers on a page," she wrote, "but behind every acquisition is a story, a family, a dream someone built with their hands and heart." She posted it anonymously to a local community blog, expecting it to vanish into the internet void. But within hours, comments flooded in. Other small business owners shared similar stories. The post was shared, reshared, picked up by local news sites. "This is what we've been trying to say." One comment read. Finally, someone put it into words. In his home office, Damien stared at his tablet screen, reading Kira's words for the third time. The details were too specific to be coincidence. The timing of the buyouts, the method of acquisition, the way the properties were flipped. He recognized his mother's tactics in every line. Iris had always been ruthless about expansion, viewing small businesses as obstacles to be cleared. He'd inherited an empire built on those calculations. The comment section filled with more stories, each one a mirror of his family's hidden dealings. People sharing memories of shops and restaurants lost to corporate buyouts, communities forever altered. Meyer appeared in his doorway. "Sir, the engagement metrics on that blog post, I've seen it." He closed the tab. "Monitor the situation." Alone again, he opened his father's old leather portfolio, the one he kept locked in his desk. Inside was a similar banknote, listing other acquisitions from that era. His father had opposed these tactics, had tried to stop Iris's aggressive expansion. 2 weeks later, his father had disappeared. Damien had never connected these dots before. He'd accepted the official story. His father abandoned them, chose a new life over family obligation. But now, reading Kira's words about community and conscience, old questions surfaced. In the kitchen, Kira prepared for the next day's duties, her post still trending locally. Her phone buzzed with messages from old neighbors, former market vendors, people who remembered her grandmother. She'd given voice to their shared history. It wasn't revenge, it was truth-telling. The kind that made powerful people uncomfortable because it stripped away their convenient abstractions. A text from Maya lit up her phone. He read it 3 times. Kira nodded to herself, continuing her prep work. She wasn't trying to bring down an empire. She just wanted the human cost acknowledged, the real stories told. Upstairs, Damien closed his laptop, his father's portfolio heavy in his hands. The past he'd inherited was more complicated than he'd allowed himself to see. And now a simple housekeeper, no, a woman with her own history and wounds, had forced him to look closer. Tomorrow he would face his board, maintain control, project confidence. But tonight, his carefully ordered world felt less certain. In the quiet of his study, surrounded by the wealth those acquisitions had built, Damien Voss confronted an uncomfortable truth. Sometimes the most damaging secrets weren't the ones that made headlines. They were the ones written in small print, on banking notes tucked between pages, in the stories of people whose lives were changed by the stroke of a pen. The staff quarters were silent, except for Maya's muffled sobs. She sat hunched on Kira's narrow bed, hands trembling around a cup of chamomile tea gone cold. "I never wanted—" Maya's voice cracked. "She has photos of my sister's illegal entry papers. One phone call and immigration would—" Kira leaned against the dresser, processing. The betrayal stung, but Maya's fear was raw, genuine. "Start from the beginning. Iris approached me 3 months ago, said she needed someone to monitor internal communications, forward certain documents." Maya wiped her eyes. At first it was just meeting minutes, scheduling details. Then she wanted financial records. The leaked data about the shell company. Maya nodded miserably. "She has everything on my family. The forged visa applications, the money we borrowed. She said she'd protect us if I helped her." Kira's mind raced, weighing options. "We need to document this. Every email, every threat. Build a paper trail showing you acted under duress." "It won't matter. She's too powerful. Power only works in shadows." Kira said firmly. "Help me expose the truth, Maya. All of it." Before Maya could respond, both their phones buzzed with urgent notifications. Breaking news. A massive data breach had exposed encoded financial records linking Voss Holdings to offshore accounts. In his office, Damien stood rigid before his executive board on an emergency video call. The ledger entries scrolled across their screens, dates, amounts, company names, thinly disguised. "These allegations are serious," Gerard Wells, the lead director, said gravely. "The timing, with the hostile takeover bid? This is a targeted attack." Damien's voice was controlled steel. "My team is tracking the source." "The shareholders require more than tracking, Mr. Voss. They require answers." Damien ended the call and strode through dark halls to Theo's private suite. His brother lounged with practiced ease, crystal tumbler in hand. "Quite the exciting evening." Theo smiled. "Care for a drink?" "Drop the act." Damien's words cut like ice. "I know you're behind this. Dear brother, you're paranoid. Why would I destabilize our own company?" "Because you've always wanted control. You're working with the hostile bidders." Something flickered in Theo's eyes. Not guilt, but fear. "You're reaching, Damien. Maybe look closer to home for your leak." "What does that mean?" "Nothing." Theo's hand trembled slightly as he sipped his scotch. "Just suggesting you examine all possibilities." Damien studied his brother's face. Theo was hiding something, but his nervousness seemed genuine. Was he a pawn in someone else's game? In the staff wing, Kira helped Maya compile evidence. Screenshots of Iris's threatening emails, recordings of phone calls, a timeline of document requests. Maya's hands shook as she downloaded her email archive. "She'll destroy my family." Maya whispered, "No." Kira's voice was steel. "We'll protect them. But first, we need the truth." Their phones buzzed again. A company-wide email announced an emergency board meeting at midnight. The mahogany-paneled boardroom crackled with tension. Board members attended virtually, while Damien stood at the head of the table, his face a mask of control. "Voss Holdings takes these allegations seriously." He read from a prepared statement. "We are launching a full internal audit and will cooperate with any regulatory investigations." The questions came rapid-fire. "What about the shell company transfers? Who had access to these records? Is there any connection to the hostile takeover bid?" Damien deflected with practiced precision, promising transparency while revealing nothing. But his mind raced. The leaked ledger entries matched records he'd seen in his father's portfolio, transactions his mother had orchestrated years ago. In the security office, Kira watched the press conference live stream while helping Maya organize their evidence. The screen showed Damien promising accountability, but his eyes held something else. Recognition. He knew exactly where those records came from. A soft knock interrupted them. "Ms. Lane?" A security guard stood in the doorway. "Mr. Voss requests your presence in his study after the board meeting." Maya grabbed Kira's arm. "Don't go alone. She'll find out." "This isn't about your confession," Kira said quietly. "This is about what he found in that ledger." The board meeting ended past midnight. Reporters camped outside the gates while share prices tumbled in Asian markets. Inside his study, Damien loosened his tie and poured 2 fingers of scotch. His phone lit up with a text from Iris. "Handle this, whatever it takes." He deleted it without responding. The ledger entries haunted him, dates that matched his father's last known transactions, amounts that traced to properties now buried in Voss Holdings' portfolio. His mother had built their empire on buried secrets. Now those secrets were surfacing, threatening everything. A soft knock announced Kira. She entered without pretense, her face showing she understood the gravity of the moment. "The ledger," he said simply. "I know what it means." Kira met his gaze. "And I know why you called me here." The weight of unspoken truth hung between them. Outside, camera flashes punctuated the darkness as reporters sought answers. Inside, 2 people faced each other across a divide of wealth and power, both knowing that some secrets couldn't stay buried forever. Damien set down his scotch. Tomorrow would bring more questions, more damage control. But tonight he had to decide. Protect the empire his mother built, or uncover the truth about his father's disappearance. In the staff wing, Maya huddled over her laptop, documenting everything. Her hands still shook, but purpose steadied her heart. The truth would cost her, perhaps everything, but silence had already cost too much. The night deepened. In boardrooms and bedrooms, on phones and laptops, the story unfolded. A company's facade cracked, revealing the human cost of power. And in a quiet study, 2 people faced a choice between truth and consequences. Kira's fingers traced the faded business card. "Patel's Corner Market, family-owned since 1975. The small shop sat wedged between modern buildings, its weathered sign a remnant of a different era. A bell chimed as she entered. Mrs. Patel looked up from behind the counter, her silver hair neatly pinned back. "Can I help you?" "I'm researching some business history," Kira said carefully. "About a property sale in 2005. Mrs. Patel's warm expression cooled. "That was a long time ago. I found your name in some documents connected to Voss Holdings." The older woman's hands stilled on the register. "Who are you?" "Someone trying to understand what happened. I work at the Voss estate, but—" Kira leaned forward, lowering her voice. "I'm not here for them." Mrs. Patel studied her for a long moment. Finally, she called to her son to watch the counter and led Kira to a small office in back. We had 3 stores back then, Mrs. Patel said, settling into a worn chair. Good locations, loyal customers. Then the development company came. Never said they were connected to Voss, but we found out later. She pulled out an old folder. They offered to buy us out. When we refused, suddenly our suppliers had delivery issues. Our lease renewals were denied. Strange building code violations appeared. Kira took notes as Mrs. Patel detailed the systematic dismantling of her family's business. Shell companies, strategic pressure, calculated losses, all traced back to Iris Voss's signature acquisition style. Would you be willing to share your story with others? Kira asked. There are more people like you. Mrs. Patel hesitated. It was a long time ago, but the truth matters, even now. That evening, Kira worked her phone contacts from her hospitality days. By midnight, she had names: a former restaurant owner, a small importer, a family-run hotel. All lost to the same pattern of shell companies and pressure tactics. She arranged a meeting at a quiet cafe owned by a former colleague. One by one, they came. Mrs. Patel, Mr. Chen from the Golden Dragon restaurant, the Alvarez family who'd owned 3 hotels. Each brought documents, photos, memories. They used a company called Meridian Holdings, Mr. Chen said, spreading out old contracts. Promised to keep us as managers. 2 months later, new owners took over, Voss subsidiaries. Same with us, Sarah Alvarez added. Different company name, same result. Mum lost everything she'd built over 30 years. Kira recorded their statements, catalogued documents. A pattern emerged. Iris Voss using layers of shell companies to acquire properties, silence opposition, build the empire her son now protected. At the mansion, Maya slipped Kira more internal documents. Look at this, she whispered, pointing to a name. Remember those gambling debts mentioned in the board meeting? Theo's been borrowing from some dangerous people. The evidence was clear. Regular payments to offshore accounts, desperate attempts to cover losses. A man with everything to lose, making deals with anyone who'd help him stay afloat. Kira was compiling her findings in the staff quarters when Damien found her. What are you doing? He grabbed a document from her desk. Mrs. Patel's statement? Chen's contracts? You're investigating my mother? I'm uncovering the truth. You're interfering in things you don't understand. His voice was cold with fear. These people are dangerous. My mother will what? Destroy more lives? Silence more voices? Kira stood, meeting his gaze. I won't stop because you're scared. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need your protection. I need your help exposing the truth. You don't understand what they're capable of. No, you don't understand. These people lost everything. Their stories matter. Damien's jaw clenched. As your employer, I forbid you from pursuing this. As a human being with a conscience, I refuse to stop. They stood in tense silence, power and principle at war. Finally, Damien turned away. Don't come crying to me when this backfires. Kira worked late into the night, organizing evidence. Mrs. Patel's documents revealed a web of shell companies. Mr. Chen's contracts exposed systematic pressure tactics. The Alvarez family's records showed how Iris buried opposition in legal fees. Around midnight, she returned to the mansion. The halls were silent, security lights casting long shadows. Her feet ached as she climbed the staff stairs. A white envelope lay on the floor, slid under her door. No name, no marking. Inside, a single typed line. Leave before you're next. Kira's hands didn't shake as she picked up the note. She'd expected this, the same tactics used against others who dared to speak up. She pulled out her phone, photographed the threat, and added it to her growing file of evidence. In her room, she double-checked her digital backups. One copy to her secure cloud drive, one to Maya's private server, one to Mrs. Patel's lawyer. The truth would survive, even if they came for her next. The mansion creaked, settling into night. Somewhere above, Damien probably sat in his study, torn between empire and ethics. Somewhere in the city, Theo made desperate deals to save himself. And in offices and back rooms, Iris's web of power began to unravel, thread by careful thread. Kira sat at her small desk, the threatening note beside her. Tomorrow would bring more revelations, more pressure, more choices between safety and justice. But tonight she had work to do. She opened her laptop and began to write. Statement of Mrs. Sarah Patel regarding the systematic acquisition and destruction of family businesses by Voss Holdings shell companies. The headline blazed across every screen. In the city. Voss empire built on shadows, CEO linked to offshore millions. Elliot Park's exposé dropped like a bomb, meticulously detailing wire transfers through a maze of shell companies. At its center, Damien Voss. In his corner office, Damien stood absolutely still, watching the board members file in. Their faces were granite, laptops opening in synchronized judgment. The evidence is compelling. Douglas Chen, head of the board, began. We're implementing Article 7 of the Charter, temporary removal pending investigation. Damien's knuckles whitened against his desk. This is orchestrated. The timestamps don't lie. Another board member cut in. Data transfers from your private network, access logs from your study. Your household staff had unprecedented access during these periods. The implication hung heavy. Kira's name wasn't spoken, but her shadow filled the room. Across town, Kira's phone exploded with notifications. The tabloids had found fresh meat. Maid in the shade, inside source behind Voss scandal. Plus-size problem. How one woman brought down $1 billion empire. Exclusive security footage shows late-night study access. The photos were cruel. Unflattering angles, circles around her curves, arrows pointing to her walking into the study. Someone had doctored timestamps, creating a perfect narrative of betrayal. Maya burst into the staff quarters, face pale. Kira, they're about to release a statement. They're suspending you. They can't. It's already done. The PR statement hit every major network. Voss Holdings announces the immediate suspension of temporary household staff member Kira Lane pending internal security investigation. The board emphasizes its commitment to protecting shareholder interests. Kira's phone rang. Her mother, her friends, reporters. Each notification felt like another brick in a wall being built around her. The mansion transformed into a war zone. Security teams swept every room, IT specialists combed through networks, and lawyers huddled in corners, speaking in urgent whispers. Theo appeared, perfectly composed in an Italian suit, concern painted across his features. The board's appointed me interim CEO. He announced to the gathered press. We take these security breaches extremely seriously. Behind closed doors, Damien paced his study like a caged animal. The evidence was perfect. Too perfect. Timestamps showing Kira in the study during crucial transfers, access logs that lined up exactly with leaked documents. Someone had crafted this story with surgical precision. When Kira entered the study that evening, Damien's face was a mask of controlled fury. "Pack your things," he said without looking at her. "You need to leave. Tonight." "Is that an order or a suggestion?" Her voice was steel. "They'll use you," he said. "They're already using you. The tabloids, the board, and you're not?" Kira stepped closer. "Suspending me publicly? Making me the scapegoat? I'm trying to protect you." "No," she said quietly. "You're protecting yourself, your empire, your reputation. You don't understand what they're capable of. I understand perfectly. I understand you let them smear me rather than fight back. I understand you're more worried about your shareholders than the truth." Damien's composure cracked. "They have everything. The offshore accounts, the transfers. Are they real?" Kira demanded. "Look me in the eye and tell me those accounts don't exist." His silence was deafening. "That's what I thought." She moved toward the door. "You're not protecting me. You're hiding behind me." "Where are you going?" "To pack. Isn't that what you wanted?" The mansion felt colder as Kira walked the familiar halls one last time. In her small room, she packed efficiently. Clothes, documents, her laptop with copies of everything she'd discovered. The threatening note went into a sealed envelope, along with photos of the doctored timestamps. Security watched her every move, recording her departure for the official record. Maya tried to speak to her, but was pulled away by PR handlers. Even Rosa, who'd been kind to her, turned away. Fear was contagious in the Voss household. In the grand foyer, Damien stood at the top of the stairs, watching. Their eyes met across the marble expanse. For a moment, something raw and desperate crossed his face, but he remained silent, frozen in his gilded cage. Kira lifted her chin. "Goodbye, Mr. Voss." The night air was sharp with autumn chill as she walked down the long driveway. Behind her, the mansion blazed with light, every window a reminder of the fortress she was leaving. Security cameras tracked her movement, recording this final exit for whatever narrative they'd spin tomorrow. She didn't look back. Her single bag held everything she owned, but her mind carried something more valuable. The truth about the Voss Empire, about Iris's machinations, about Theo's desperate deals. The evidence was safe, backed up in multiple locations. They could smear her name, but they couldn't bury the facts. At the gate, a small army of reporters waited. Camera flashes exploded like artillery fire. Questions bombarded her. "Ms. Lane, did you leak the documents? Was your relationship with Damien Voss intimate? How long were you planning this?" Kira walked straight through them, dignity intact. Their words couldn't touch her now. She had survived worse than their headlines. From his study window, Damien watched her disappear into the night. His hand pressed against the glass, an unconscious reach towards something already lost. Behind him, his phone buzzed with board messages, crisis meetings, damage control strategies. The mansion settled into uneasy silence. In the security office, cameras recorded empty halls. In the staff quarters, whispers died to nothing. And in Damien's study, a single light burned late into the night, illuminating a man caught between empire and truth, watching the space where Kira had stood, unable to bridge the distance his own choices had created. 3 days after leaving the Voss mansion, Kira stood in a tiny studio apartment, unpacking her single bag. Sarah, her friend from her hospitality management days, had helped her secure the place on short notice. "It's not much," Sarah said, helping Kira arrange the sparse furniture. "But it's yours, and they can't touch you here." The space was cramped but clean, a far cry from the mansion's marble halls. A bed, a desk, a kitchenette. The bathroom was barely big enough to turn around in, but it was safe. Kira's phone buzzed constantly with messages from reporters. She ignored them all, focusing instead on organizing her evidence. Spread across her small desk were testimonies from the small business owners, Mrs. Patel's handwritten account of losing her family store, photographs of empty storefronts, bank statements showing suspicious transfers. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, watching Kira create a timeline of shell company formations. "These people are powerful." "That's exactly why they need to be exposed," Kira replied, adding another document to her growing file. Across town, Damien sat in his home office, stripped of his corporate authority but not his resources. Maya had slipped him internal communications before being reassigned, emails between board members discussing an emergency restructuring. His phone lit up with a text from Theo. "Board meeting tomorrow. Your presence isn't required." Damien's jaw clenched. He'd hired Johnston & Associates, a forensic accounting firm known for their discretion and thoroughness. Their preliminary report sat on his desk, highlighting suspicious patterns in offshore accounts dating back years. The pieces were falling into place. Theo's gambling debts, supposedly paid off months ago. Iris's constant maneuvering of board members, the perfectly timed leaks that seemed designed to force him out. That evening, Damien drove to his mother's estate. Iris greeted him in her usual pristine manner, every silver hair in place, her smile perfectly measured. "Darling," she said, "I was just about to call. The press is being absolutely savage." "Stop!" Damien cut her off. "I know about the shell companies." Iris's smile didn't waver. "I'm sure I don't know what you mean." "Rivermark Holdings, Azure Partners. 5 more, all registered through law firms in the Caymans." He watched her face carefully. "All tied to accounts that covered Theo's gambling debts." "You're under tremendous stress," Iris said smoothly. "Perhaps we should discuss this when you're thinking more clearly. I have the transfer records." For a fraction of a second, Iris's composure cracked. Then she recovered, moving to pour herself a drink. "Everything I've done has been to protect this family. By framing me, by using Theo's debts as leverage." The board needed a narrative. Iris said coldly, "Better a temporary setback than complete destruction. Once things settle, things won't settle." Damien interrupted. "I'm done protecting lies." He left his mother's house and drove straight to his bank. The safety deposit box required 2 keys and a fingerprint scan. Inside, beneath decades of legal documents, he found what he was looking for: a leather-bound ledger in his father's handwriting. The entries were meticulous: dates, amounts, company names, wire transfers to offshore accounts matching perfectly with the timing of small business closures. And there, in recent entries, payments to cover gambling debts, signed by Iris herself. Back at his mansion, Damien began preparing documents for full disclosure. Every transfer, every shell company, every board member involved. His hands shook as he typed, but his resolve was firm. Meanwhile, Kira sat in a small coffee shop with Mrs. Patel and 3 other former business owners. They spoke quietly, sharing stories of how their livelihoods had been stripped away. "We'll hold the panel next week," Kira explained. "Everything on record, everything public." "They'll try to stop us," one man warned. "Let them try," Kira replied, thinking of the backup copies of evidence stored in multiple locations. She returned to a tiny apartment late that night. The space felt honest after the mansion's opulent facades. Her phone showed missed calls from Maya, probably warning her about legal consequences. Kira ignored them. Instead, she opened her laptop and began writing. "The truth about Voss Holdings isn't in their press releases or their stock prices. It's written in the empty storefronts of our community." Across the city, Damien sat in his study, surrounded by evidence of his family's corruption. The same study where he'd ordered Kira to leave, where he'd chosen protection over truth. He opened a new document and began to type. "To the board of directors and shareholders of Voss Holdings." His fingers moved steadily across the keys. Every paragraph stripped away another layer of lies. Every sentence was another nail in the coffin of his family's carefully constructed image. The moon rose over the city. In her small apartment, Kira gathered testimonies into a coherent narrative. In his mansion, Damien documented decades of financial manipulation. 2 people working separately towards the same truth, each carrying pieces of a larger story. Tomorrow would bring lawyers, press conferences, and public reckonings. But tonight was for preparation, for gathering strength, for choosing truth over power, justice over protection. The night grew late. Kira's laptop screen illuminated her determined face as she worked. Damien's study light burned steady as he assembled his disclosure. Neither knew the other was awake, working. Neither knew their separate actions would soon collide in ways that would shake the Voss empire to its foundations. They only knew that lies had cost them too much already. The truth would cost more. But it was a price both were finally willing to pay. The shareholders' meeting hummed with tension. Damien stood at the podium, his composure ironclad despite the storm about to break. Camera phones recorded every moment. "Before we proceed with today's agenda," he began, "I have evidence of systematic financial misconduct within Voss Holdings." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. In the front row, Iris's perfectly manicured nails dug into her armrest. "This ledger," Damien held up the leather-bound book, "contains detailed records of wire transfers through multiple shell companies dating back 15 years. The transactions were executed using my name, without my knowledge or consent." He projected the first page onto the screen behind him. Numbers marched across it in his father's precise handwriting. "Furthermore, I have testimony from Maya Chen, our executive assistant, who was coerced into facilitating document transfers under threat to her family's welfare." Damien's voice remained steady. "Ms. Chen has provided recorded evidence of this coercion." In the middle rows, board members shifted uncomfortably. Theo's face had gone pale. But perhaps most damning are the statements from small business owners who lost their livelihoods to these manipulated takeovers. "Mrs. Patel?" Mrs. Patel stood, dignified in her simple sari. "My family's market was bought through what we now know was Rivermark Holdings, a shell company. We were told it was a fair market sale. We learned later the pressure tactics were orchestrated by Iris Voss." Iris's composure finally cracked. "This is absurd." "The evidence is conclusive," Damien continued. "Bank records show regular payments from these shell accounts covering gambling debts accrued by Theodore Voss, who then conspired with outside investors to orchestrate a hostile takeover." Theo lurched to his feet, but security blocked his exit. "In light of these findings, I am voluntarily stepping down as CEO pending a complete independent audit. I take responsibility for not investigating sooner, but I will not protect lies any longer." Across town, Kira sat with 24 small business owners in a community center. Live streaming the shareholder meeting on one screen, they prepared to share their own recorded testimonies. "Your stories matter," Kira told them. "Today we make sure they're heard." The next hours unfolded in a blur of legal documents, press statements, and recorded evidence. Iris was escorted from the building by security. Theo's gambling debts became front-page news. The hostile takeover collapsed as investors withdrew. By evening, Voss Holdings had announced a $50 million reparations fund for affected businesses. The board appointed an interim CEO while investigations proceeded. Damien watched from his study as the news cycles churned. His phone buzzed constantly. Lawyers, reporters, board members. He ignored them all, thinking of Kira. She was still at the community center, surrounded by people, sharing decades of buried truth. Her phone lit up with a text from Maya. "They're creating an oversight committee for the reparations fund. They want you to run it." Kira stared at the message. Around her, people hugged and cried, years of silence finally broken. Later that night, her apartment doorbell rang. Damien stood there, tie loosened, looking exhausted but unburdened. "I should have done this months ago," he said quietly. "I should never have told you to leave." Kira leaned against the doorframe. "Why now?" "Because I want a partner, not someone to protect or control. Because you were right about everything." He met her eyes. "I'm in therapy. I'm learning to talk about things that scare me, and you terrify me, Kira, in the best way. I won't be your employee, she said firmly. Be my equal. Run the reparations program. Help me rebuild something honest. He took a breath. I love you. Not as a secret or a scandal, just as you are. Kira studied him. The proud CEO was gone, replaced by something rarer, a man willing to be seen. Terms, she said. I set my own boundaries with press. Equal say in the program, and we do this slowly, honestly. Yes to all of it. She opened the door wider. He stepped inside her small, warm space, so different from his marble halls. They talked for hours, really talked, about fear and family, about money and morality, about what love looks like without power games. When they finally kissed, it was tender, equal. His hands trembled against her face. She steadied them with her own. Stay, she whispered. That night held no pretense, only vulnerability. They moved together with a tenderness that felt like healing, speaking truth between breaths. Later, wrapped in her worn quilt, Damien traced patterns on her arm. I never knew it could be like this. Like what? Real, he said simply. 4 months later, they stood in the newly opened community center. Children played in the courtyard, while former business owners taught cooking classes in the industrial kitchen. In the staff break room, Kira made coffee while Damien washed dishes, a simple domestic moment that would have seemed impossible before. The Oversight Committee approved 3 more grants today, she said, passing him a mug. He dried his hands on a dish towel. The board's quarterly review went well. They're talking about reinstating me with conditions. And I told them I need another month. There's a small business seminar I promised to teach. Kira smiled. This was the man she'd chosen, the one who'd chosen truth over power, love over control. He pulled her close, coffee forgotten. In the background, voices and laughter filtered through from the main hall, the sound of community rebuilding, of truth setting people free. Thank you for listening. Stories connect us in the most unexpected ways. If you felt that spark today, make sure you're subscribed. I share a new one daily, and the next might change your day.